Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel. We have finished our series on Regency combinations, and so I'm starting a new series. I put a poll out on my social media, and by popular vote this series will be about patterning and fitting. So I decided to also come from the angle of make your own Halloween costume because it is fall, y'all. And I'm super excited about fall. Fall and Christmas are my two favorite times of the year, and so I've already been wildly planning fun things for the fall and even into the Christmas season. Hence the reason why I'm dressed today and why I have this on my dress form. So if you follow my Instagram or my Facebook, you will have seen this dress before. This was my first attempt probably ever at a somewhat historically accurate costume. It was also one of my early attempts at literary cosplay, which is what most of my costumes are actually based off of. I don't just do it for the historical value. I typically design costumes based on characters out of books. And so this one was based on Lucy out of Chronicles of Narnia, specifically in the Prince Caspian book and movie. I had read the books and then I went and saw the new movie that came out. It was around 2008, 2009, 2010, somewhere in there, and then this was my Halloween costume for that year. So, as I have posted before, this is not a historically accurate costume, but it does do a pretty good job of representing Lucy, especially the way she's dressed in the Prince Caspian movie. And I still love this costume for many reasons. So I thought I would get all dressed up because Halloween is about dressing up, and I love any chance I get to dress up and play a character. So if you look in the background, you can see some of the supplies that I've been gathering for my Halloween costume this year. I have gone with a literary theme once again. This year I have chosen Edgar Allan Poe's The Masque of the Red Death. As I've mentioned, I'm an English high school teacher by day, and The Masque of the Red Death has long been one of my favorite stories to teach to my students, especially when I taught sophomores for a long time. So I am making a dress that would have fit the time period that he would have written that story in, and also possibly something that someone might have worn to the masquerade in the story The Masque of the Red Death. So I have my red plaid, I have some black velvet here, and I have my bonnet already. I put in an order for the rest of the supplies that I need yesterday from Farmhouse Fabrics. If you have not checked them out, go check them out. They were running a sale, which they don't do very often, and so I quickly put in my supplies that I needed, and I'm looking forward to receiving those next week. So in this series, I'm going to walk you through making a costume from a pattern. The first thing we're going to talk about is sizing. Pattern sizing is very different than fashion sizing, and so we're going to talk about that. That's the first thing that typically throws people for a loop when they try to start sewing from patterns. I have been sewing for almost 30 years, and I have sewn with patterns for most of those years. In the last few years, I've gotten more and more into drafting my own patterns, especially since I run a business now, and I don't want to infringe on any copyright with using patterns to make the things I sell. I draft all the patterns for the items that I sell in my shop. However, if I am making something for me personally or for a gift for someone else, I will usually adjust a pattern that I already have because it's still much faster. And I have many years of experience in adjusting patterns to be the design and the fit that I want. And so to me, that's still faster than drafting a pattern from scratch. So today we're going to talk about how to determine what pattern size that you need to use. So as proof in my belief in patterns, I thought I would give you guys a quick tour of the amount of patterns that I own. And that is only one drawer. I have two drawers full of patterns. So just to reiterate what I was saying before, patterns are a very useful tool when you're sewing. Don't feel like you have to draft or drape from scratch. Start with patterns to make it easier. Okay, so let's talk about sizing. To make the burgundy part of the costume that I'm currently wearing, I used this Simplicity costume pattern. Now, I did something called pattern hacking or Franken patterning in order to design this burgundy dress exactly the way I wanted. So I didn't necessarily follow this pattern exactly. I will teach you how to do that in a future video, but I want to talk about sizing for right now. So normally I fall in the 8 to 10 range. I've gained a little bit weight during quarantine, and so sometimes I'm up to a 12 right now. So you would look at this and think, oh, this pattern will fit me perfectly, right? However, if you look at the measurements on the back, if you look at even a 12, so let's say go with the largest size that I fit in right now, you have a bust of 34, a waist of 26.5, and a hip of 36 inches. My bust right now is 42, my waist is 36, and my hips are 43. So that would actually put me all the way over here in a size 20. So most people would make one of two mistakes. They either make the size that they're used to wearing in fashion sizing or ready to wear off the rack sizing, or they do look at the measurements and they make a size that is much bigger than what they're used to wearing. They make it according to their measurements, but certain parts of the outfit turn out too large still. So I'm going to teach you how to make something that fits your bust, waist, and hip measurements, but doesn't turn out too large in your armholes or your shoulders or your neck holes or even your back neck to waist. Like this is way too long for my back neck to waist measurement, 17.5 inches. So the key to remember is don't get your feelings hurt when you look at this, because if I think, oh, size 20, that hurts my feelings. There's no way I'm a size 20. I'm used to being a 8, 10, or 12, right? So don't get your feelings hurt. Remember that pattern sizing runs about 6 sizes smaller than off the rack or fashion sizing. And then the other thing to remember is that I own some vintage patterns from the 1940s and the 1950s, and the measurements on here have not changed. So I know for sure that they haven't changed since the 40s or the 50s. They may have not even changed since before then. And we know that just humans in general have slowly gotten larger throughout history. And so that isn't any reflection on you or your weight or anything. It's just simply the way that patterns run. So remember that. Remember that your bust, waist, and hip are going to run about 6 sizes bigger than you're used to wearing, okay? So how do we avoid having too big of armholes, too big of shoulders, too big of a neck hole, too long of a waist now if I'm going to have to make a size 20 to fit my bust, waist, and hip? This book is your best friend when it comes to making a pattern fit you correctly. I'm showing you 2 different editions. This is the old edition that I grew up with, Fitting Fenice. This is the one that my grandmother and my mother both have. But then when I went to order myself a copy, they've actually updated it, and it's called Pattern Fitting with Confidence. You can find these on Amazon, both the used older version and the newer version. Okay? So this is going to save your life. This book right here. This is how I grew up adjusting patterns. This is how my grandmother adjusted patterns, how my mother adjusted patterns. And it is an amazing method. So you want to start on page 8, choosing the right pattern size. And the way to determine what pattern size you actually need is to use this method right here. You want to measure across your front, right above your bust line, from the crease of your armhole to the crease of your armhole. And then you have this chart right here that converts that measurement into the size pattern that you need to wear. So my front measurement is 13 inches, so the pattern size I actually need to wear is a size 10, which means then I just need to adjust the bust, waist, and hip to fit those things correctly. If I start with a 10, I will have the correct size fit on my armholes, on my shoulders, on my neckline, on my back neck to waist most likely, although that sometimes has to be slightly altered. So that's where you want to start. And then it's actually quite easy to make a pattern larger. It's harder to make a pattern smaller. So we are going to go over how to make your patterns larger to fit your bust, waist, and hip in my next video next week. So thank you for joining me in this video. I have linked Nancy Ziemann's book below on Amazon. It is the newer version. I have not found any differences so far between the newer version and the older version, other than the color and some graphics and a few things like that. So feel free to, buy the older version if it's cheaper. If you have any questions, like always, you are welcome to find me on social media. You can comment below and I will be more than happy to try to answer your question or help you find the information. I've also linked a fashion sizing versus pattern sizing chart below. I didn't create this, so it's going to take you directly to the creator's website, and that will help you see what I'm talking about as far as fashion sizing is about 6 sizes smaller than the pattern size when it comes to bust, waist, and hip. But remember, the key is to take that measurement across your front right here and then use the chart in Nancy Ziemann's book to figure out the size you need to start from. And next week I'll teach you how to make your bust, waist, and hip to fit you correctly. So if you are super interested in this series and following along for making your Halloween costume or a holiday costume or anything else, I would highly recommend that you invest in Nancy's book and have it ready to go when my next video comes out next week. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to visit my Etsy shop if you want to buy a costume ready-made or commission a costume, and follow me on social media. Thank you.